meeting now, that would be great. Questions can be asked under item 11. If you want to ask a question as the meeting progresses, please use the chat function, if we run out of time at the end of the meeting, if you provide your contact details, we'll get back to you. I am seeing some people eat breakfast, and I hope you're enjoying it, but it would be good to turn our cameras off. So if I could ask Derek, Maria and Alan to turn your cameras off, that would be great. Thank you very much. So we'll get going. So the apologies for absence that I have are from Governors Jean Arrowsmith, Helena Darcy-Cope, Mike Flaxman and Mike Wells, and from the Board of Directors, Anne Coyle, Sophie Gilgs and Phil Gilbert, although they will be joining later. Maria, your camera is still on. If you can turn your camera off on your phone, that would be great. Otherwise, everything you do will forever be recorded in posterity. That's perfect. So the minutes of last year's meeting of the 8th of October, are there any amendments to those minutes? Please raise a digital hand. Okay, I can't see any digital hands raised. So if you're not happy to approve those last set of minutes, could you please raise a digital hand if you're on the Council of Governors or the Board of Directors? I can't see any digital hands raised, so we will therefore approve those minutes. Thank you very much. And so the way we're going to organise ourselves this morning is Glenn is going to give a presentation on the annual report, pulling out some key issues on the quality report, the summary accounts and the auditor's statement. I'll then give the annual report of the Council of Governors. We've got a video to come along the way and hopefully all of that technology will work. And then we'll end the formal bit of the meeting. And then we will go on to our achievements and future focus and the annual Going the Extra Mile Awards, which is always my favourite bit of the meeting. So Glenn, I'll pass over to you for the sort of summary statements on the annual report, annual accounts and the quality report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully let's get it going with the slideshow and then you can tell me that you can see it. So can you see that, Chairman?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Marvellous. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I'm going to take you through a summary of the annual report, quality statements and financial statements, but the full statements are available on our website. What I'm actually using in my slides is also a summary of the annual report, so that's available on the website also. So I'd encourage you to have a good look through certainly the summary, and if you've got the time to take a look through the annual reports, because there's so much content in there. The annual financial statements have been audited by our Deloitte's external auditors. The quality statements for the NHS have not been audited for the last couple of years. There was a decision nationally that we wouldn't do a full audit because of the impact that COVID had had. In fact, there was a decision that we didn't need to produce quality statements during that period, but we decided to continue to produce quality statements. So what you see there are our quality statements, but they haven't been subject to audit. We're also part of a group. Over the last few weeks, we've had the annual general meetings of both George Eliot and Wye Valley Trusts, and it's been great to reflect on the positive year that they've had also. And much of the things that I'll reference in here are things that we're working on across the group, which has been really quite positive. So probably the most significant change to the structure of the NHS over the last year has been from actually July of this year that integrated care systems have become formally established. In the last year, the kind of build up to that has been quite intense. Integrated care systems are formal statutory partnerships of the NHS, but also local authority colleagues, and it's those partnerships that are probably the most significant part of this. I think there's been in my view, probably too much focus on a reorganisation of the NHS, and people have forgot the point that this is about looking at the wider permanence of health and being focused on prevention and integration. I think I can hear someone's microphone on out there, so if you could turn your mics off, that'd be great. So we sit in the Coventry and Warwickshire Integrated Care System. Our partner, George Elliott, is in that system also. And I sit on the Integrated Care Board, which meets on a monthly basis to oversee the way that the integrated care system works. And we're finding our feet with that. I think probably one of the most significant things to remember in all of this is that Coventry and Warwickshire is made up of 4 distinct places in the way we've decided to run it: South Warwickshire, Rugby, Warwickshire North and Coventry. And the needs of those different populations are quite different. So by focusing down on South Warwickshire, in our case, or Warwickshire North for our community services, or Rugby for our community services, and indeed those that we deliver into Coventry, we are hopefully going to be changing the way that we prioritise things in those localities, because those local needs vary across the system. So, despite the fact that we've had a 3rd year now affected by the pandemic, and the pandemic has continued to constrain some of our functioning and make it really difficult for our staff, including many staff having to isolate because of testing positive, we still managed to do an awful lot of things and to develop a number of services across the whole organisation, which is to everyone's credit. So I'm just going to, on this slide, just pull out a few things that have happened. So firstly, Allsop ward at Leamington Spa Hospital, which is part of our acquired brain injury unit, that opened over the last year, which has allowed us to move the Campion patients into that state-of-the-art new ward facility, which is great for our patients and great for our staff. We've also significantly upgraded the endoscopy unit at Warwick, and if you view it from the corridor that I'm on, you can see just how much work has gone into that, with all of the pipe work, which has allowed us to make it compliant with the very latest requirements, including being compliant with some of the ventilation requirements, which have heightened because of COVID. We've also delivered the car park, which is something I talked about for a long time. So a multi-storey car park that sits on Millers Road. It's available for our workforce. So for the first time in all of my time here, which has been a number of years now, all of our staff have got somewhere to park. And we haven't been able to offer that until now. So we hope that that will help us to recruit and retain more staff, because that is still a challenge across the NHS, and it is for us. We've also developed the new community emergency response service, so a 2-hour response from our district nursing teams that allow us to develop admission prevention schemes, but also to step patients down from hospital rapidly. Our overall philosophy, which has driven us for a number of years, is home first. We want people to be supported, maintained, back home as quickly as possible. The acute hospital plays a part in all of that, but we want those to be very short, effective stays in hospital. So our work on discharge and flow, some of you may have seen featured on the BBC National News last week, and great credit to all of our staff, the way that they came over in that TV piece, which was really positive. We're very much leading the NHS in some of that work. We've also been working as a board and across the organisation on equality, diversity and inclusion. We've been doing some work on discrimination in the workforce. We have a programme called Civility Saves Lives, which looks at the way that people interact with each other in teams. And again, this is something that we've done across the group by training lots of staff in that and increasing the positive atmosphere and culture in our workforce. We've reviewed our values. So for a number of years now, we've had safe, effective, compassionate, trusted as our values. We've added inclusive, and that was based on feedback from staff and very much represents our approach. We've gained the status of being veteran aware. We've been collaborating with our hospices, and that has helped to develop our new role which as the lead provider in the place of South Warwickshire, we will start to be playing more of a commissioning role, so working with hospices and others to deliver the best services to our local patients. We've also been working on the future, and a couple of really significant things. Firstly, the partnership with the University of Warwick. Chairman has already mentioned that we've had a name change this year, so we've added university and gained university status as an organisation. What does that mean to patients? Well, what that means is that we are focusing on research and training. We've been training medical students and lots of other clinical disciplines for a number of years now. We have a great reputation. So what that creates for us is a pipeline of future consultants, of future nurses and therapists, but also the research means that we are innovating and delivering new services. And the attraction to the University of Warwick, particularly with working with us, is that we've got this whole pathway approach, the out-of-hospital focus that I've just described. So we're really pleased to see that, and I'll show you a slide and note some of the projects that we've been starting. We've also been pushing forward on our green plan, so the NHS ambition to be net carbon zero by 2040. We aim to get ahead of that. We've already made some investments in that. They generally work well for the environment, but also work well financially, and we'll be making another bid over the next year to do more. And again, there's an opportunity here for learning across the group. Our colleagues in Wye Valley have been particularly strong on this with their heat pumps initiative, and we're looking closely at that. The other one on this slide is the estates strategy. So we are consulting with local community at the moment and stakeholders in a strategy that future-proofs the Warwick site. And a key element of that is actually replacing our surgical day unit. And we hope to be able to announce quite shortly the first step in that journey with an investment during this financial year. And then there's the staff survey. So the staff survey is something I always focus on because it's the biggest indicator of quality for any NHS provider. And we have risen over the years to be one of the best performing organisations in the whole NHS on this. And so we were delighted to see, despite the fact that the overall survey results for the NHS were somewhat challenged because of the impact on staff of COVID, that we have continued to be one of the best performing. So in this year's survey, there were 99 questions asked. In 72 of those 99 questions, we were significantly better than our peers. There was only one where we were significantly worse than our peers, and that was a question about whether staff regularly work additional hours. And whilst I don't want that to be the case for our staff, it indicates the culture of our organisation that people are willing to do that and actually still being positive about lots of other questions in the survey. So probably at this point, a huge credit to our staff, and Chairman later will recognise some of the individual stars within that and team stars within that. So just a brief list of some of the things that we are doing from a research perspective. I say it's about looking at the whole patient pathway. We, as I've mentioned, have a national reputation around frailty, but we also have in a number of other areas. Orthopaedics was also featured on TV recently, and really great to see how that team is attracting and helping patients from other parts of the NHS. So we're doing what's called mutual aid, because we've got shorter waiting times for orthopaedics here in South Warwickshire. Patients from Leicester, from Birmingham and from Herefordshire have been coming to Warwick and have been giving really positive reports back about the experience that they've had. But we've also been innovating in the space of digital, and our partnership with specialist computer centres, our digital hub at Stratford, has helped us to put some new innovations into practice. So we are still the only outstanding rated acute provider in the whole of the Midlands region, and through focusing on research, we aim to stay there. Our volunteers are a huge part of the patient experience. It's been difficult for many volunteers to work with us during the pandemic. We've had to restrict access to sites. So it's quite remarkable that we still had 17,000 volunteer hours across the trust. It's been also great to see younger aged individuals coming along and volunteering and helping us. And I won't read out all of the things that are on that slide, but it covers the whole range of services, including, and I'm sure we'll need them soon, the 4x4 volunteers who help us to get staff into the trust when we have difficult weather situations. And it's great the way that they just mobilise overnight and come out and help us. So lots of things going on there. The charity that the board members are members of, the charity trustee for South Yorkshire Foundation Trust Charity, has also done a lot of things. They're listed there. I won't go through all of them. One of the big projects at the moment is the Young Minds Matter project, which is an upgrade to McGregor Children's Unit, which will allow us to look after young people in crisis in a better way. Staff health and well-being, so lots of things listed there around how we've got this kind of wider offer to look after our workforce, and a lot of that is reflected in the results of the staff survey that I mentioned earlier. Again, this is something that we've been using the strength of the group to do better. Gertie, our Chief People Officer, is also Chief People Officer at George Eliot, so we've done quite a lot of work, particularly with George Eliot colleagues. We've also been developing leadership potential across the group with a group-wide approach to that, and also improvement. So we have a methodology for improvement, which is a lean-based QSER improvement technology, and we've been using that, developing that, training our workforce, but also training place partners in the use of that approach, so that everyone is thinking about how we can make improvements to the quality and the efficiency of the services that we deliver to patients. And by doing that, we can deliver more. There's a list of the activity across the organisation there. Again, I won't go through it all. You see 82,000 A&E attendances, also a big rise in emergency admissions. So we're very much back open for business post-pandemic. Particularly the urgent care demand that we've faced has been really quite huge over the last year, because we generally perform well on urgent care, particularly on ambulance handover time. So ambulances, when they come here, we take the patients and release the ambulance rapidly. We've also seen a degree of additional activity coming in through what's called intelligent conveyancing. So West Midlands Ambulance look at turnaround times in every acute site, and often that leads to ambulances on the edges, Birmingham, Worcestershire, coming into Warwick, which has increased the demand on our services. And then lots of elective activity going on. Someone's not muted. Okay, as that stopped. That stopped. Great. And then also, what I'm on this slide just to talk about elective recovery. It's a huge concern nationally that there are now a large number of patients waiting for elective treatment as a result of the pandemic. We're ahead of the curve on that. We delivered the complete elimination of the 104-week waits earlier than planned. We will deliver the 78-week target earlier than planned, and as a consequence, as I mentioned earlier, we will be helping others in that battle. So turning to the financial performance review, so the full accounts that have been audited are available on our website. Just on this slide, a few headlines from that. I mean, firstly, to say our turnover now has risen to just short of £400 million per annum. Across the group, we're approaching £1 billion per annum. So a lot of public money that we are responsible for, and we take that responsibility very seriously in the way that we govern our finances. We pride ourselves on not being in deficit and not having been in deficit for each of the last, I think it's probably now 12, 13 years as an organisation. Most acute providers are in deficit. This is also one of the reasons why we are a segment one, top segment organisations, by holding the line on that, but it's not easy, particularly actually because we've now moved to a different funding methodology. We used to be paid under what's called payment by results, which for us as an efficient provider meant that we could create surpluses. But over the last 2-3 years during the pandemic, we've moved to a bit more of a top-up arrangement, and I've been working hard with national colleagues to try and move to something that's a bit more flexible than that rewards those organisations who are efficient. We have a reference cost of 88. That means that we, with the base of 100, we are 12% more efficient than your average NHS provider. So if we were paid at a full average price tariff for all the activity we do, we'd have a surplus of £40 million. Unfortunately, we're not. So this year we were topped up to a level that allowed us to make a small surplus. And we also helped NHS England through a technical adjustment to our position, which actually reported a deficit of 3.5 million. But that's a technical deficit. And just to be really clear, we met the financial targets that were set out for us. Alongside revenue, we also spent £21 million on capital projects, and the main projects are listed there, the biggest element of which was the multi-storey car park I've already referenced, but a number of the other things I referenced earlier are also there. Frustratingly, one of the constraints that we have to operate in now is that all of our capital has to fit within a limit that's given to the integrated care system. Previously, as a foundation trust, we had freedom to spend our capital, so it does constrain us a little bit more these days. And then there's a reference there to our cost improvement programme. We delivered £7.8 million worth of savings, which in a year that's been somewhat blighted by COVID, that's again a great result. One of the things we're focusing on over this year is reducing the amount of spend that we have on agency staff, which has risen as a consequence of some of the sickness absence related to COVID. So, Chairman, I have finished the slides, so we can move on to the next part of the agenda and maybe take questions later.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Glenn. And as I hope members of the public can gain assurance, it's been another very impressive year by everyone at the Trust in terms of our frontline teams and our executive directors, ensuring that we continue to outperform the average. But things are very, very tough. Even in the figures that Glenn showed us in terms of activity, the emergency ambulance and ambulatory care was up sort of 25-30% on pre-COVID numbers. That is sort of illustrative of the trend of us getting more and more volume coming to us. John, we can see you taking a photograph of us, which is great. Would you be so kind as to turn off your camera just for bandwidth purposes? Thank you very much. So we'll move on then, and I will now give the annual report of the Council of Governors. So maybe for members of the public who aren't familiar, as well as the board of directors who run the Trust and are responsible for the performance of the Trust, as a foundation trust, we have a Council of Governors, which is made up of elected and appointed governors who are there to oversee the board of directors' work, appoint the non-executive directors, including myself, and to appoint the auditors. But arguably most importantly, to be the representatives of the citizens that we all serve, to ensure that we give the best possible performance we can. So I'm chairman of that, as well as the board of directors. So I'll just give a summary of everything we've been doing over the last year in the Council of Governors. Barbara, lovely that you've been able to join us today. Barbara, you're being recorded, so could I ask you to turn your camera off? Otherwise we will see all of your movement, so to speak. And you too, Sophie, if you could turn your camera off, that would be great. Thank you very much. So Since the last annual report, the Council of Governors has met formally in public 5 times in May, September, October, November and February. And following the governor elections at the beginning of 2022, the new Council of Governors had an extraordinary meeting on the 23rd of March 2022. However, due to the COVID pandemic and following national guidelines received, we've continued to meet virtually using Microsoft Teams. That has benefits, but it also has disadvantages. The main benefit, in my view, is it does enable governors who may find it more difficult to get to a particular meeting to join us, although we do lose the advantage of the sort of social interplay that physical meetings allow. And where meetings have coincided with particular periods of acute pressure during the pandemic, the Council of Governors have tailored the agendas accordingly to allow executive directors to focus on their frontline works. And in those situations, the non-executive directors have often presented reports and taken questions from governors. At each of those meetings, the Council of Governors received reports on the performance of the Trust and the Trust plans, were able to question the chief officers and always Glenn and non-executive directors on any of those reports. And each meeting has also received reports and considered recommendations from the Council of Governors subcommittees, which include the Nominations and Remuneration Committee, the General Purposes Committee, the Patient Care Committee, and during that time, the Business Oversight Committee. In performing its statutory duties, the Council of Governors has received and approved the recommendations from the Nominations and Remuneration Committee regarding the reappointment of 3 of the non-executive directors, Rosemary Hyde, Simon Page and Sue Whelan-Tracy. They received and approved the creation of a nominated non-executive director position from Warwick Medical School, and I'm delighted that Paramjit Gill is now a nominated non-executive on the Board of Directors. We received and approved the recommendation from the Nominations and Remuneration Committee to appoint 2 non-executive directors, Richard Coffey and Phil Gilbert. Richard, you've joined us. If I could ask you to turn your camera off though, please. We received and approved the recommendation to appoint Simon Page as the Trust's Vice Chair after the many years of service of Bruce Paxton. And we considered and supported the recommendation to appoint Sue Whelan-Tracy as the Senior Independent Director. We considered and approved the Governor's Code of Conduct following a detailed review by the General Purposes Committee. And we reappointed Mary Malloy as the lead governor. And I can't thank Mary enough for her work as lead governor. Mary does a phenomenal amount behind the scenes to ensure the good working of the Council of Governors with me, and does a great service to all of our governors and the Council. Thank you, Mary. We've received a report from the Trust's external auditors on the outcomes of their work. We've received the Register of Governors and Governors' Interests, and we received and approved the report on the annual appraisal of the non-executive directors, which is undertaken by me. The Council of Governors also received and noted the annual report and accounts for 2020 and 21. They agreed the membership of the subcommittees, they received and noted the intention to seek university status, and they agreed the Trust's change of name to South Warwickshire University NHS Foundation Trust. So some of the highlights of the Council's business during the year, and I will just pull out a few, is the Governors continue to contribute to the development of the Trust's strategy through our roundtable meetings. The Governors in particular sought assurance from the Trust during the year of all aspects of the Trust's response to the COVID pandemic and winter plans and the Ockenden report, as well as the recovery of elective services post the pandemic. The Governors continue to contribute to a variety of internal project meetings, including end-of-life care, the Ellen Badger Hospital development, car parking issues, falls, particularly thanks to David G's commitment to the falls work, the patient portal group, governor induction, and particular thanks there to Chris Baker, who retired as one of our governors during the year. He did a great piece of work on governor induction for us. The governors have also been involved in Wayfinder projects, Safer Discharge. Particular thanks there to Jean Arrowsmith for her work with the fire and service in regard to Safer Discharge. So a really broad aspect of work being undertaken by the Council of Governors. And the Governors continue to be a member of the Clinical Governance Committee, which is now chaired by Dr. David Spraggart. So we see in all areas of the Trust's work, the Governors giving a level of oversight and for them to be able to gain assurance on behalf of citizens about the work we're doing. In terms of membership development in the modern social media world, in particular during the pandemic, is not an easy one. But our membership numbers have broadly stayed constant. But we have undertaken workshops to look at ways of increasing the membership. It's probably worth noting, and I may have mentioned it in the past, that I think more people follow Glenn on his Twitter account than are members of the Foundation Trust. So we really do want to ensure that all of Glenn's tweets and followers become members as soon as possible. In terms of elections and appointments, as I said, there were elections in February last year, and the newly elected governors, just to read out everyone's name, were Jean Arrowsmith, Julie Bell, Michael Coker, Emma Colligate, Ruth Cowan, Helena Darcy-Cope, John Egan, Sharon Ellswood, David G, Dr. Callie Harrison, Jane Knight, Roger Lloyd, Mary Malloy, Graham Nuttall, Andrew Petros, Carolyn Pickering, Patricia Scott, Kathy Wagstaff, Sue Warner and Mike Wells. And then our appointed governors, Councillor Joe Barker, Sophie Black, Councillor Alan Broad, Dr. Susie Deasy and Councillor John Howard. So on behalf of, and sorry, just in terms of some final comments from the governors. So the formal statement reads, we, the Council of Governors, are assured that the Trust has again performed well. Governors are aware that the Trust has not been able to perform against certain targets, as well as in the past in some areas, but we are, however, satisfied that despite these challenging times, the care provided by the Trust continue to be of a good standard. Led by the Chair and Chief Executive, we expect this to continue. We're also assured that its finances are well managed and quality of care is overseen by competent management teams. We're pleased to see a number of significant developments and innovative changes which further support patient care. The Council of Governors sees its role as holding non-executive directors to account, seeking assurance on behalf of patients and supporting the Trust in ensuring that the current position is maintained and where possible improved, whilst being conversant of the significant continued and increasing challenges and pressures for facing the NHS nationally and locally. So that brings the Council of Governors annual report up to date. As indicated, it has been another tough year, and as we enter the year ahead, I'm sure it's going to be tougher, but I'll leave that to my closing remarks at the end of the annual general meeting. So, any other business from the Council of Governors or board members, please raise a digital hand, otherwise I'll bring this formal part of the meeting to a close. I can't see any digital hands raised, so the date of the next annual general meeting will be arranged and advertised in due course, but we will now close the formal bit of the annual general meeting and move on arguably to the more exciting bit outwith of Glenn's presentation, because we have produced a video of our achievements and future focus. So hopefully the technology will work and Sarah will be able to share that video with us, and then afterwards we will move on to the annual Going the Extra Mile Awards, and I will make a few closing statements. So Sarah, can you try and get the video to work for us?
The South Warwickshire Foundation Trust, the main acute site within the trust is Warwick Hospital. And Warwick Hospital is a relatively normal district general hospital, so it's a busy site that undertakes elective work, urgent care, and we have quite a growing elderly population. So I suppose one of the first things I talk about is a culture within the organisation, which is we don't cancel patients. We move mountains in order to make sure that we can separate our elective care from our emergency care. We spend a lot of time getting our emergency pathways right and getting flow right within the hospital. We look at internal professional standards, ensure that we deliver the safer bundle and do red to green. So all of those things allow us to put the right patient in the right bed. We do a lot of same day emergency care, so we don't admit patients to hospital unless we absolutely need to. And that allows us to contain our urgent care within its footprint and protect our elective beds.
Hi, my name's Annalie Baker. I'm a Surgical Advanced Clinical Practitioner at Warwick Hospital. We're really excited to be opening our new Surgical Assessment Unit in its permanent location at Warwick Hospital. This investment by the Trust enables us to develop patient pathways, to improve patient experience and to help relieve pressures on the Accident and Emergency Department. We're looking forward to welcoming our first patients and to continuing to develop the surgical patient's pathway.
brilliant because I didn't really know what was going on with my health. And that they had a team there and they welcomed me in, and the first thing they did was sort out my breathing with a respiratory nurse, and she was amazing. And it wasn't just, you know, see you for 2 weeks or whatever and send you on your way. She kept me on till she knew that I could actually control my breathing. And she said to me that she would still keep me on the books and see me within a year. Also, the doctor, who I can't remember what his name, he was in charge of the clinic, he also diagnosed sleep apnea for me, and it was quite severe and I didn't know. I have a dietitian from the long COVID clinic because I have real trouble eating. I feel sick all the time. I don't want to eat, and being a diabetic and having insulin as well is quite difficult, and she is amazing. She rings me every 4 to 3 weeks, long telephone conversations. She doesn't rush me. She goes through foods, exercises. So I'm really, really grateful. I can't speak highly enough of the Long COVID Clinic in Stratford.
Hi, I'm Sophie Jolts, Chief Strategy Officer and the Executive Lead for the Trust for Sustainability. Climate change is a health emergency as well as an environmental one, and as such, nationally, the NHS is committed to being net zero carbon by 2040. What this means is that our Trust also has a role to play in this, and our Green Plan will help us get there. Everyone in this organisation will have a responsibility to join in and help us achieve these goals. It's not new for us. We've been starting to look at this in 2011. There's a number of things we've already put in place with the help of our sustainability manager, who we'll talk to you shortly. And these are things like the car share schemes, solar panels, and actually using total renewable energy for our electricity. That being said, there is a lot more for us to do. I'd welcome all of you, and I'd encourage you all to go onto the website and have a look at our green plans. This really sets out our ambitions, and it is ambitious, and it will take everyone. This year in particular, we've got a focus on procurement, how we purchase our products and our services, and actually how we can reduce our impact on the environment. We won't be alone in doing this. We've got many partners that are also looking at this and how they achieve it. So actually everyone playing a part and working together on this will help us achieve these green plans.
I'm Christina Collegia, Sustainability Manager at Swift. We would like to take all our staff, visitors, patients and communities on this sustainability journey with us, because without you it won't be possible. From the sustainability team, we will be running regular campaigns for you to get involved with, but you can also help outside of these. If you see something broken, please report it. Switch off items that are not in use, reuse and recycle wherever possible, and travel actively to our sites if you can.
The Trust is committed to installing 100% LED lighting across all our hospitals by March 2024. LEDs are a highly efficient type of lighting which use less electricity for the same light output, around 85% less electricity when compared to conventional lighting. The NHS have an ambition to standardise LED lighting across hospitals, and in Swift we've already started this work.
National Food Review in October 2020 states that every hospital is to implement a digital meal ordering system by 2022. ISS introduced this system called PEMOS, Patient Electronic Meal Ordering System, as an alternative to the traditional paper-based meal ordering approximately 4 years ago.
Threw me a dummy there, Sarah. So thank you, Sarah, for that, and thank you for the communication teams in terms of producing that video. As you can see, a whole series of things and achievements and real pathfinding bits of work. Just a couple of things I would add. The work Glenn referred to it earlier of Swift within the foundation group of the three trusts of George Eliot and Wye Valley is a really important element of us playing a leadership role within the national NHS to try and share best practice in other locations and drive up standards in the trusts that Glenn and I are responsible for. So the foundation trust, the foundation group rather, is a real area of success as well. But we don't underestimate the challenges that we have and the challenges that still exist, both in terms of continuing to cope and work with our communities in terms of the ever-increasing demand on our services, as well as for our staff, the challenges of well-being coming out of COVID and the practical issues of the financial challenges with the fuel crisis and all of the implications that has. And my final point would be, and Glenn referred to it in his presentation as well, our stance on discrimination and racism and inclusion. It has been a major area of work for the Trust over the course of this financial year, and our commitment to stamping out racism, both internally and externally, and to protect all of our members of staff is absolutely resolute and will continue to be an area of focus for us. Glenn, is there anything you'd like to add to the video?
No, as you say, the work of the comms team to pull it together is great. I mean, it's hard to do justice to all of the staff that we have in all of the locations they operate, as I say, across whole of Warwickshire, Coventry, Solihull, in so many different roles with a few minutes of video. But that hopefully that captured it. What we did through the course of that video was look at the objectives that we set for ourselves each year, which we do in very much close partnership with our governors, and we've got another set of ambitious objectives for the year that we're in now, and we look forward to delivering those too.
No, thank you, Glenn. I'm going to change the agenda around a little bit. We were due to go to the annual Going the Extra Mile Awards now, but our clinical winner, I know, Emma Louise, has been working on nights and isn't able to join us for a little while. So I'm going to change the agenda around and go to questions from members of the Trust and the general public. I know we've had, I think, 4 questions submitted. So we'll run through those first. Then if anyone else on the call wants to ask a question, I'll give you the opportunity for that. And then we'll go back to the Going the Extra Mile Awards, hopefully by which time Emma Louise will have taken the can of Red Bull and be able to join us after a hard night shift. So Sarah, could you please read out the first question, which I think was submitted by Judy Still?
Thank you, Russell. So Judy asks, why, when there is so clearly a need for community hospitals and so much evidence of their contribution to integrated health and social care, is the Trust not going ahead immediately with the redevelopment of the Ellen Badger Hospital in Chipston on Stour, which has been delayed for several years? Community hospitals take the pressure off A&E by treating conditions like UTIs and chest infections close to home and help to relieve bed blocking by providing interim care during recuperation, quite apart from the mental health benefits, particularly for elderly residents and their families. The North Cotswold Hospital at Moulton-in-Marsh in Gloucestershire is serving its community so well, and there is a similar distance for people in that county to travel to a larger hospital. There can be no question that beds are needed so care can be close to home.
Thank you, Judy, for the question. Glenn, do you want to answer that for me, please?
Yeah, thank you, Jude. I'm really pleased you asked the question, actually, because it gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit about where we are with Ellen Badger. It's been quite a frustrating one, actually, because there's quite a lot of misinformation around what we've been doing as a trust and what our priorities are. I mean, firstly, the development of Ellen Badger was something that we decided to do as an organisation before there was a kind of call from the public to do something about it. So we set out an ambitious plan to develop the site, particularly an intention to co-locate the local GP practice onto the site, but then also to make the site busier than it is now, particularly through ambulatory care, but also through offering services that help to support the local community more. And that's very much the vision which we set out. We consulted with the people of Shipston, held a number of public meetings. We put in a planning application, got planning permission. Obviously, these things don't happen immediately. But at that point, obviously, COVID struck, and it's been a little bit tricky to move the project forward. One of the main issues has been the increased cost associated with all capital projects has made it hard for the local GP practice to afford their part of that development, which was in the original design. They are working with the integrated care system to try and secure additional funding. We've put forward some alternative ownership models to them, but the practice is keen to retain an asset. And because they want to retain an asset, we can't subsidise an asset that's privately owned, which is what GP practices are. So we've had to ensure that we can be as flexible as possible with the bits that we own and the bits that they own. So because they have not been able to commit to their part of the project, we've had to put that a little bit on the back burner. We've had to redesign the site so that their element could be built afterwards and still connect to the site in the way that we want it to happen. And we are still moving forward with the rebuild of the main building, which will include the ambulatory services, the health and wellbeing hub, bases for our community staff, outpatient space. Alongside all of this, there's also been a bed review underway across the whole of South Warwickshire, and that's been looking at the use of beds by parts of the local community. The number of beds that we have at Ellen Badger, and those beds have been relocated whilst we've been doing this work to the Leamington site. We have community hospital beds in South Warwickshire, 35 community hospital beds, but only about 4% of those beds are used by people from Shipston. Actually, the biggest majority of use of community hospital beds is from people in Kenilworth, Leamington and Warwick. So actually going to Ellen Badger for those beds is not care close to home. So we're trying to look flexibly about how we can create capacity for the local community, because we will still need beds, as you set out in your question. And indeed, Morton in Marsh would be a lot nearer for those patients than coming to Warwick or to Kenilworth. So we'll continue to look at those options. The bed review will conclude. In around January, we'll know what we need to provide for our patients. One thing we're also doing is, in addition to the community hospital beds, we use beds in local care homes, which can be therefore really close to where those individuals live. And those discharge to assess beds, as they're called, there's probably around another 30 to 40 of those across the whole of the system. So we'll try and see if we can use those flexibly. But we are absolutely committed to revitalising Ellen Badger Hospital, and say we hope to start the work on site before Christmas, and look forward to that project moving forward.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you for the question, Judy, and we share elements of your frustration. The second question was from Jenny Heath. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you. So Jenny's not able to attend today, but she has a few observations and suggestions that she wanted to share, having been a nurse for 45 years, working in community hospital and as a practice nurse. So Jenny said that she's seen these waiting times for ambulances and GP appointments as so unnecessary. If the pharmacist could get to take out Stone quicker, it would save a patient being stuck in a bed for a whole day, which is still happening. And as for community care, where is it? The primary care trusts were abolished in 2013, and things have never been the same. The hospital took on the contracts of district nurses, and now they do not work closely enough with GPs. When I retired in 2002, the district nurse visited the surgery each morning and picked up their workload after discussion with the GP, which took the burden off them. GPs worked an 18-week rota of on-call and visiting people at home, saving ambulance call-outs and preventing deterioration with health. Please can we go back to these working methods? It's not more staff needed, Mr. Burley, it's organisation and forethought.
Jenny, that is a great question, to the point. Glenn, what would your observations be on Jenny's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the question, Jenny, and thanks for those 45 years. That's 6 years more than I've worked in the NHS, so I know what a long time that is. I mean, firstly, we work really, really closely with Primary Care Trust. I'm not the Secretary of State for Health, so in terms of the GP contract and their on-call arrangements, that's something I've not got direct control over, but we work really closely with them to ensure that there's local access to patients. Over the last year, I've been involved in a national review of primary care called the Fuller Stocktake, and particularly we looked at how we need to better integrate the community teams, such as district nurses, with practice-based teams. And what we're seeking to do through the recommendations that have now been produced is to support what called primary care networks, which work on a locality basis, to work together. So a number of practices working together with us, putting our community resources alongside them with ideally integrated management structures, and increasingly integrating the facilities that we operate out of, such as the Ellen Badger project. Another project we're working on also is Covington Lillington, so that we're alongside each other delivering integrated care to our patients. And whilst I agree that better organisation is always helpful, and I mentioned earlier in my talk a little bit about some of the work we're doing around improvement and efficiency. The NHS does also need more staff, and that's something that we are very keen to ensure that we do well in that recruitment market also. But yeah, we would expect our community staff, district nurses, health visitors to be in the orbit of primary care colleagues and to work together to ensure that care is joined up. And actually what we will see in the future is more of the secondary care consultants being in that team. Traditionally, they've been more hospital based, and we've had a separation between hospital and community, but the use of digital and other things will ensure that they're more integrated, and what we do is a home first model of care.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Jenny, for the question. I think the only thing I would add is that quite often people make decisions without recognising all of their consequences and there are unintended consequences of decisions, and I think the way you describe your experience would have been very helpful if people had taken that into account before some of the decisions made many moons ago were made. So our third question is from Anna Pollard. Sarah?
Thank you. So Anna asks, what is Swift planning regarding the renewal of the contract for soft services with private company ISS? Contracting out services fragments the workforce and runs counter to the profused NHS ambition of greater integration for safe, effective and efficient services. When ward cleaners have separate employees and managers from nurses and health professionals, it prevents the creation of a single team and increases pressures on nursing staff to cover non-nursing roles, with a loss of time and effort for patient care. Some NHS trusts have brought non-clinical services back in-house. For example, in 2020, Imperial College Healthcare brought NHS trusts brought porters, cleaners and catering staff who had been outsourced to Sodexo back in-house. Also, Swift set an example of good practice in integrating its clinical and non-clinical workforce and bring soft services back in-house so that these staff receive NHS pay rates, sick leave and pensions in line with NHS staff.
Sarah, can we just stop on that one first? Yeah. We'll come on to the second part of Anna's question. Glenn?
Yeah, so firstly, hello, Anna. It's been a little while since we caught up, but thank you for the question. I mean, firstly, the contract, the outsourcing of what we call soft services, so catering and cleaning services and portering services at the trust it's been outsourced for quite some time. In fact, all prior to me joining the trust, so at least 16 years, it's been outsourced to a number of companies. What I would say is that as part of that outsourcing, the TUPE rules apply, so transfer of undertakings, protection of employment rules, which ensure that those individuals can retain their NHS terms and conditions if they so wish, and that they have certain protection of their rights. And indeed, many of those staff that were transferred out still remain with the current provider. It's changed hands a few times during that period. The current contract runs until November 2024. And at that point, there is the opportunity for us to consider insourcing or outsourcing to another supplier, and we will evaluate the position. During the course of this year, our own wholly owned arm's length company, Swift Clinical Services, will be taking back in the Stratford site as a bit of a pilot for us to see how that works. And if that works successfully, it will give us some learning for what we do when we come to that November 24 retendering.
Thank you, Glenn. And Sarah, if you can give the second part of Anna's question, please.
Thank you. What policies has Swift put in place regarding financial help for Swift staff facing hardship during the current cost of living crisis, regarding areas such as travel allowances, tax exemption, travel allowances for community staff, free parking and cheap or free meals? Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So yeah, this is a real worry, and obviously we worry about the impact of the cost of living increases on the whole community, and actually that will increase the demand for our services because the relationship between health and wealth. But our own staff are obviously a direct concern for us. We have created a hardship fund. I'm not sure whether many staff will put their hands up and want to access that. We're aware that NHS staff have been accessing food banks as well, which is a real worry. So we continue to work with staff side. We have increased the rates of pay for travel expenses for those staff who work in community roles, because it was starting to look difficult for some of them to actually fulfil their roles. So and that wasn't a national change, that was a local change that we introduced. And we will be seeking to look at any other things that we can do for staff. One other thing that we're developing is a nutritious value meal in our main dining room that's available for staff, so that option is there for them. And we continue to offer support and signpost advice to staff around how they can manage their finances over this winter.
Thank you, Glenn. But clearly, Anna, as you referred to in your question, we are very aware of some of the issues on travel in particular, and fuel costs and the consequences of that, both in terms of filling up the car with petrol or diesel, but also home fuel costs. Any other questions from members of the public? We've got a few minutes. Would you care to raise a digital hand if you'd like to ask Glenn or I a question? John, your hand is raised. John Holland.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a comment about the journey to and from Warwick Hospital, and we're certainly very pleased that the new car park is open, and by we I mean the neighbours. And it was joined up with the County Council in that extending the yellow lines was delayed until the staff car park was open, because the last thing anybody wants to do is add extra inconvenience to NHS staff. But there's also a development at Warwick Hospital where Network Rail have a project to install lifts to make the station more accessible. And the latest information I have is that work should start next month. But quite frankly, I'll believe it when I see it. But the reason I put my hand up is that obviously your sustainability manager is doing good work. And I know in the past you've done things like encouraging cycling to and from the hospital. And at the moment, the County Council has open a consultation on transport plans. So if anyone in this meeting wants to help the sustainability agenda of healthy lifestyles and resisting climate change, if they go on the County Council website and were to prioritise work from the county on supporting the journey to and from our hospitals, that might be something people could actually do that would help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Points very well made. Any other questions, though, from members of the public? Okay, I can't see any digital hands raised. So we'll therefore move on to the Going the Extra Mile annual award part of the meeting. Emma Louise, I don't think is with us. Sarah, can you let me know when she's joining the meeting? So just by way of background, what we have is effectively every month at our Board of Directors meeting, we have a Going the Extra Mile award winner. And every year at this part of the annual general meeting, we celebrate in particular the annual Going the Extra Mile awards. So I will pass over Emma Louise at the moment, but I will therefore start off with Sarah Foster, I think is on the call with us. Sarah, thank you very much for joining us. Sarah's our non-clinical winner. So I'll just read out the nomination which relates to why Sarah won the award. So Sarah Foster, Locality Manager for Health Visiting Warwickshire, was chosen as the latest annual non-clinical Going the Extra Mile award winner for her credible decision making, open and honest leadership approach and organisational skills. The nominator said during a time when the team were undergoing difficulties with recruitment due to a national shortage of health visitors, the team were asked to assist in the health assessments of Afghan refugees across Warwickshire and Rugby. Sarah led on this, building up very quickly relationship with local agencies and partners to ensure health needs were met in a very timely manner. The nominator also commentated that Sarah was instrumental in embedding new pre- and post-COVID-19 pathways. She also engaged with parents who didn't support the new virtual pathways in their network to find out what changes the service could make. This included overhauling the service's Facebook pages, exploring other avenues of communication, and commissioning a new website that was fit for purpose. Sarah also became a trustee to the network's newfound charity status and provides open dialogue and engagement with the mums. In addition, Sarah has also led on teenage pregnancy pathways, strengthening the links between the health visiting team and the family nurse partnership team. Sarah, if you can come on screen for a second, if you're okay to do that. Sarah, just on behalf of everyone in Warwickshire, thank you enormously for such fantastic work that you do. You're an absolute star. You're a very worthy winner of our non-clinical Going the Extra Mile annual award. Big round of applause from me and many, many thanks. And the good news about this being a virtual meeting is you now don't have to have your photograph taken with Glenn and I, but we will provide such a service in the future if you ask for it. But Sarah, in the meantime, thank you very much. Keep up the great work. You're an inspiration to many, and your leadership skills are fantastic. Thank you. So I'll move on then to the team winner. And the team winner is the McGregor Ward. Now, the McGregor Ward, I know, are really busy today, but hopefully we've got Michelle and JC joining us from the team there. So McGregor and Gal, we've got some rest of the team. Hi, team, coming on stream. So the McGregor Ward have been seen many times by the board over the last year or so because of the enormous challenges we know you've had. But I'll just read out the nomination. So McGregor Ward were chosen after they received a nomination for the swift action, outstanding care and attention the team collaboratively provided to the nominator's twins. The nominator said during a very scary time, all the staff didn't just do their jobs, they went above and beyond and were very kind, caring, supportive, and couldn't have provided better care when the twins were admitted on 2 separate days with the same condition. On both occasions, the multidisciplinary team provided the same high standard of care to both the patient and parent. Now that's just one example. The McGregor ward have been sort of the focus with the board on a series of other great bits of work and challenges you've faced over the last year. So you really are very, very worthy winners of the annual Going the Extra Mile team award for this year. So big round of applause from everyone for you. Can you please take back the thanks of everyone to the frontline guys who are working so hard day in, day out to provide the care that I know is critical. And Michelle, you do great work of sort of coordinating everything, so it's all really appreciated. Take care, everyone, and thank you very, very much. Now, I'm not sure whether Emma's
Yes, Emma's here.
Oh, Emma. Ah, there you are. Lovely. We've been waiting for you, Emma. I think you've done a night shift. So before you joined the meeting, I said, hopefully she'll take a Red Bull. And so she'll be supercharged for the day ahead. Just as an aside, I saw someone the other day, a rosterer, who had 3 cans of Red Bull in front of them. And I was really worried about it because she just kept on going after Red Bull after Red Bull. Word to members of the public on this call, don't drink Red Bull, it's not very good for you. But anyway, Emma, you are an absolute star. You're our clinical winner of this year's Going the Extra Mile annual award. So I'll just read out the nomination. Emma is a nursery nurse in the Special Care Baby Unit, the SCABU unit. And a member of staff nominated you for being passionate about improving care for babies and their families, and how you are always looking out at ways to make things better. Emma has worked tirelessly to achieve the Bliss Baby Charter Silver Award. The nominator also said that Emma always pulls the team together. Emma has also recently been awarded the prestigious Nursing and Midwifery Award in the Regional Parliamentary Awards for the Midlands. Emma has been a key driver of change to ensure Warwick Hospital's SCABU delivers high quality family centred care as standard. This means involving the family as much as possible in their baby's care. For the past 4 years, Emma has worked extremely hard as a trust lead for the Bliss Baby Charter. This charter is a framework for neonatal units to assess the quality of the family-centred care they deliver. Emma's commitment and dedication to implement highly effective improvements that tangibly benefit babies and their families was rewarded in May 2022 when the unit achieved the full gold Baby Bliss Charter accreditation. Emma, I'm the non-executive director responsible for maternity care, which obviously SCABU is part of, and I'm aware of the phenomenal work, particularly given the challenges of the profile of the Ockenden report, that all of our maternity teams provide day in, day out, under increasingly busy circumstances, in a site that is quite compromised because of history and the layout. But Emma, you are an absolute star. I can't thank you enough on behalf of the Trust, but also on behalf of the parents, the mothers, the families that implicitly you help bring safe babies into the world. As I often say at board meetings, we do 2 critically important things. One is to bring life safely into the world through our maternity services, and secondly, to allow life to leave the world with dignity in the way we look after our older patients. So you're very much at the forefront of what's important for us as a trust to do. Emma, you're an absolute star. Can't thank you enough. Big round of applause for Emma. You have a great day. Try and have a sleep. You're doing nights tonight. Okay, I can't hear you, but I think you said no. So you have a good rest and a proper sleep. Take care. Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of the meeting. I just want to make a few closing remarks. I am incredibly proud to be the chair of SWIFT. It is an extraordinary organisation where our teams do extraordinary things day in, day out, under extraordinary pressures. I'd like to particularly thank Glenn as Chief Executive for his tireless work in terms of ensuring that we continue to perform as highly as we do. Anne Coyle, who's I don't think on the call today, Anne is the Managing Director at SWIFT. I'd like to thank Anne and all the Executive Directors. I'd particularly like to thank Harkamel and for the way she's, over the last year as our Operations Director, done an extraordinary job at focusing on the challenges and the day-to-day grind of working through what is a very, very difficult set of circumstances we face. And I'd like to thank my non-executive director colleagues, in particular Simon Page, my deputy chairman. We are missing a few people today, and I'd also just like to remember them and wish them well. Charles Ashton, our medical director, has recently had some surgery. Charles, we hope you recover soon, and our thoughts are with you. Fiona Burton, our Director of Nursing, is having a bit of a tough time with cancer and chemo. So Fiona, you're in our thoughts and prayers. And I'd also like to remember Charles Hart, who's Deputy Chair of our Patient Forum. Charles has been an outstanding example of a volunteer for a number of years, and Charles is in quite poorly health. He's actually at UHCW. I've spoken to Charles a couple of times over the last week or so, but Charles, you're in our thoughts and prayers as well. We hope you have a speedy recovery, and you're in our thoughts. To all our volunteers, I'd like to say thank you very much. We have a phenomenal group of volunteers, as Glenn referred to, and our League of Friends are extremely generous. And I'd also like, again, just to put on record my thanks to the Council of Governors. The year ahead is going to be a very, very difficult year for the NHS. Glenn and I often say that this looks like it's going to be the toughest winter ever, but this year looks to be extremely challenging. We have the challenges of very high demand coming into our services, and to help us look after you better, we would say to people, all of our citizens, please have your flu jab. Please have your COVID-19 jab when you're offered it. Please look after yourself and look after others in your community. On the supply side, all of our staff are very weary after the challenges of coping with COVID. I again thank all of our staff for their hard work. We're doing everything we can to try and create an environment that helps you achieve everything we know you want to for the population we serve. But in the meantime, our thanks from the Board of Directors for everything that you do on our behalf. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to seeing you at next year's AGM. You're always very welcome to come to the public board meetings, which occur every month. They are still being held digitally, just to enable people to join us and to ensure that we minimise any health risks out of it. But in the meantime, please take care, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.